have any time for any gossip now. Eh? Yes.
Hey, I'm just dancing to my intro. So, guys, y'all, we got to talk about this Diddy situation, okay? And y'all got to stop going to all these channels listening to what these people are telling y'all, which is lies. Y'all do know people on YouTube, they get paid based on views, okay? Y'all just be listening to everything. So, I wanted to do this video strictly because I saw somebody reporting that Diddy is going to go to jail. That is totally not true. Now, with these allegations, obviously, if this is true and these things really happen, should he go to jail? Yes. But let me show you why Diddy will not settle on this suit. And let me show you why he is not going to jail. So we need to talk about facts and what's real. And the fact that people are saying that he is going to go to jail is simply not true. Hey, I gotta grab something. I'm sorry. Okay. It's simply not true. So let's get into it again, because I just get frustrated when I see people just putting anything just so y'all can watch the video. Let's get into this document first, because there's things in here and it's clearly he's not going to go to jail. Again, not saying that, this is something that a person should not go to jail for, but we have to deal with the facts and what is real. You know what I mean? And the fact of it is, you have to convict a person in order to put them in jail. Is he going to be convicted on something that happened, 20 years ago? In order to be convicted, you have to convict the person. So you have to have witnesses. By her being the only person there, where are the other people? There is nobody to corroborate her story, which is part of the problem here. So let's jump into it. And that's partially why I wanted to come on here and do this video. So let's jump into it here. Just give me a moment to share my screen. I hope everybody is doing good. Actually, I like the videos better. Like didn't do videos, but actually I like them better. I was using another software, so what I'm using now is a little bit better. Well, it's a lot better. So let's get into this, because we got to get into the facts and what is real. Let's get into it. So y'all can see that. Good. There's a lot of other stuff that y'all don't need to see, but let's try to make that. Let me see if I can make it bigger. I don't know why they do all that over to the side. Okay, let's get into this. Let's get into it. Let's get into it, because this is the basis of that lawsuit. This is it right here, the entire document. And I'm going to, I wonder if I highlight. I don't want to highlight because I want to make sure y'all can actually see it in full. So I will not be highlighting. Let's get into it. And I'm going to point out, again, Diddy is not going to jail. This is about money. This is not about him going to jail. If this was about him going to jail, then they wouldn't have filed a lawsuit. Think about it. Do you want the person in jail, or do you want them to pay you? It's obvious they want, or the lawyer wants money in this situation, because if he was in jail, what's your chances of getting the money? That's a lie. He's not going to jail. There was no complaint filed. Stop believing everything people put on YouTube. So let's jump into it really fast. All right, let's get into it. Again, Jane Doe simply means the person does not want to release her name. With these type of complaints, the plaintiff can pretty much say, I do not want to list my name because I fear retaliation. I fear all these things. But again, this is Sean Combs, Harvey Pierre, and then the third assailant. She doesn't know the third person, whoever the third person was. Again, this is a problem in a criminal complaint, because you have to know names. You cannot convict a third person. We need to know the name of whoever this person is. Do you really think that Diddy and this other guy is going to actually tell who this third person was? if you guys pay attention to this, again, it says trigger warning. Now, for those of you who had the opportunity to see Cassie's 35-page document, you would have noticed that the information that Cassie had, in her complaint is very similar. And it's similar because this is the same attorney. So he's using a lot of copy and paste here. Keep in mind, he has a lot of information. This is, in fact, a copy and paste. Trigger warning, same thing. So, plaintiff Jane Doe, which again, we don't know her name, alleges as follows. This is the preliminary statement. Look, he references Cassie in his first paragraph. On November 16, 2023, Cassie, Cassandra Ventura, aka Cassie, remember she filed a 35-page lawsuit in which she exposed Sean Combs for subjecting her to nearly a decade of physical, I can't say that word on YouTube, but you guys know what it means, sexual, and emotional abuse, punctuated by, I can't say that word and being forced to engage in drug-fueled, non-consensual sex encounters with other men. So some words I'm just not going to read because, again, this is YouTube. This is the part that I don't like about YouTube because a lot of things you can't say. And that is why I'm creating a Patreon account. So what I want you guys to pay attention to, again, I showed you that first part, the trigger warning. That is a clear copy and paste from Cassie's document. No, hands down. I mean, I have both documents. So what he's doing is he's referencing Cassie's complaint, which really has nothing to do with this complaint. But what he's doing is trying to bring validity to the new claim by introducing Cassie's claim. Okay. Then he says, ordinarily, when a lawsuit such as Miss Ventura is filed that involves events that took place long ago, witnesses are few and far between, and evidence is hard to muster. Again, in order for somebody to be convicted in a criminal proceeding, you hear in this complaint, it says it took place a long time ago. Witnesses are few and far between, and evidence is hard to muster. So the fact that somebody is reporting that he is going to face criminal charges is a lie, because you need to have proof to be able to face criminal charges. So this should tell you right here, there will be no criminal charges in this case. It was too long ago. Where is the witnesses? So, okay, let's keep it going. Okay, not so for the claims brought against Mr. Combs. Within minutes of filing, salient facts of Mrs. Ventura's claims were confirmed by various witnesses, including rival musician whose car Mr. Combs blew up, as well as various individuals who observed Mr. Combs beat Mrs. Ventura. So again, with Cassie's situation, it was very much different. And I'm going to tell you why. Cassie had a relationship with Diddy in which she was out in the public, which means Cassie was able to build relationships around different people that knew him, that knew her, who basically came to her aid. So with her case, very much different. With this case, very much different. I'm not saying that the new case does not have validity. Again, you guys know what I mean. Cassie had a relationship. They were seen together. People witnessed certain things that it's going to be hard to prove in this particular case. Okay. It's going to be hard to prove. So again, he's referencing Cassie's case to bring validity to this case when they have nothing to do with each other. So he goes on to say only a few days later, and this is in reference to Cassie's case, he says 2 other lawsuits was filed, naming a plaintiff that alleged that Mr. Combs, I can't say that word, drugged her, and sex assaulted her when she was a college student. Remember, that came out next. The other lawsuit accused Mr. Combs, remember, and singer Aaron Hall, of forcing the plaintiff and another identified woman into non-consensual, there's that word again, I can't say, sex. Now, at the same time, remember, I'm trying to refresh you guys' memory. At the same time, there was the fourth lawsuit, which was filed. This one against Combs, this was against his company. And remember, Harvey Pierre, which was the president of Bad Boy. Remember? So that's the other one. Now, in that suit, it alleged that Mr. Pierre, which is now the co-conspirator in this case, used his position of power at Bad Boy to groom and sex assault his former assistant. And that Bad Boy basically knew about it and did nothing. That is what this complaint says. Now we're into complaint number 5. And this is why you guys see on some blogs, they say 4 lawsuits and then some say 5. Because in all actuality, there is 4. But the 5th one was brought against Diddy's business, not in particular him on his own. But then there is the lawsuit with him and Pierre together. And now there's another one with him and Pierre together. Now you see the similarities, right? So we're going to go into the actual complaint and what actually happened that this Jane Doe is alleging. She states in 2003, she was only 17 years old at the time and in 11th grade. Mrs. Doe was sex trafficked and gang R'd by Mr. Combs, Mr. Pierre, and a third assailant. Again, the third assailant is going to be a problem because who is this person? I do not believe that they will give any names of anybody else. Another issue is, I believe because I did read this in preparation of this video, in the state of New York, and I believe this is where this happened, and it's not just in the state of New York, this is states across the U.S. The consenting age is 16. I know in Georgia it's 16. In most places it's 16 and 17. Now, that does not mean that a person has the ability to R somebody, but what it does mean is people say you got to be 18. No, you can consent at a younger age. So what you're going to read in this complaint is she's going to say that she didn't consent because she was out of it. So let's keep reading. She says when she was a teenager, she met Pierre and the third assailant in a lounge in the Detroit area. While at the lounge, Mr. Pierre insisted that he was best friends with Mr. Combs and even called Mr. Combs. So it is alleged that Mr. Pierre called Mr. Combs to introduce Jane Doe, right? It seems like now Mr. Combs allegedly convinced this girl over the phone. Keep in mind, she never had met him. So she got on a plane and flew on a private jet of somebody she did not even know. Now, I'm doing this because, I'm struggling getting in a car with somebody, but you got on an entire jet and went to a place because you talked to somebody on the phone. I don't know. I'm just reading a complaint. So she got on so Mr. Combs convinced Miss Doe, who was half his age at the time, to accompany Mr. Pierre and a third person on a private jet to come to his studio in New York. Again, she didn't know him. She talked to him on the phone, and he convinced her over the phone to get on a private jet and come see him. I don't know about that. And keep in mind, the attorney keeps mentioning that he was half her age. This is the similar thing he was mentioning in Cassie's complaint. So this is what I mean when I say copy and paste. Before they left for the private jet, Mr. Pierre smoked CRAC in a lounge in some bathroom in which he assaulted Mr. Doe by forcing her to give him Hopefully you guys can see oral sex. Again, this is YouTube. Just can't talk about certain things on YouTube. Can't wait to get my Patreon account. So now we're introducing a third assailant. So it looks like Mr. Pierre and a third assailant and another gentleman then escorted the high schooler. So now he brings out that she's a high schooler. Keep in mind, this is to persuade the court in some kind of manner, because this is a high schooler, but a high schooler also took it upon herself to get on a private jet, not blaming her, but the word high schooler, this was a full functioning young lady. So, it says a high schooler to a private jet, which flew them to Teterboro, New Jersey. I've never heard of that. It states that there were SUVs waiting for the group at Teterboro, and the four of them were driven to Daddy's House Recording Studio, a studio famously owned and operated by Mr. Combs and Bad Boy. So this is apparently Diddy's studio. This is the name of it. They say while at the studio, Mr. Combs and his associates, including Mr. Pierre, they plied her with drugs and alcohol. As the night wore, again, he's saying on this 17-year-old girl, this is to make people appease to her being 17 years old. He says that she became more and more inebriated. She was obviously drunk, eventually to the point that she could not possibly have consented to having sex with anyone. Again, keep in mind, she was the consenting age, which does not make it right. But what I'm trying to get you guys to understand is the facts. Because at 16 and 17 in most states, you can consent. The only way to call it RAPE when you is this age is to say that you were out of it and you could not have consented. So I'm looking at the facts, and I want you guys to look at the facts. Please don't take this in any way, shape, or form that I'm saying, oh, well, she was this or she was that. No, this shouldn't have happened if, in fact, it did happen. But I need to talk about the facts and not just run around here just saying anything. Okay. So while at the studio, Mrs. Doe was G-R'd. Y'all know what that means. I can't say it. G-A-N-G-R'd by Mr. Combs and a third assailant and Mr. Pierre, in that order. Okay, now that's disgusting. While Mr. Combs was R-ing her, Miss Doe complained that Puffy complained that he could not get off unless she pinched his nipples as hard as she can. Okay, Mr. Combs then watched on as a third person assailant who Miss Doe had not even realized had begun to have sex with her and R'd her. Mrs. Doe began telling this person to stop. It states after the third assailant was finished, Mr. Pierre took his turn and R'd her. Miss Doe, oh wow. It looks like that he violently forced her to give him sex, oral, okay? Again, we're on YouTube, which Miss Doe, it looks like she was choking and struggling to breathe. Okay, when Mr. Pierre finished, he left Miss Doe in the bathroom. She fell on the floor in a fetal position, and she laid on the floor, saying that she was in pain. Her vajayjay was in pain. Finally, after a period of time, Miss Doe regained her bearings. However, she could barely stand up following the GRAPE and had to be helped to walk out of the building and back into the car. Now, I'm wondering who walked her back into the car, because these would be pieces of the information that people are saying that he's going to be convicted. They would need all of this information. He won't be convicted on this. She was taken back to an airport and flown back to Michigan. So she went from Detroit to New York. So that is where she went, according to this complaint. However, she doesn't remember or has no recollection of her report home and only remembers being in her car sometime early in the morning. So, unfortunately, it's really bad when people are R'd and they're given DRUGS because, I mean, think about it. You can't remember stuff. Like, it's not your fault if somebody did that to you. But this is where it becomes important. If you have no recollection, that's going to be a problem because how do you prove to a jury if you have no recollection? So they have to go on facts. And you saying you don't remember, that's going to be hard. And I anticipate that he is not going to settle this particular lawsuit. And I'm going to tell you why. He just settled a lawsuit with this same attorney. And now the attorney is pretty much using it in this complaint as if you did it. So I think Diddy has learned his lesson, and I do not anticipate he will be settling this because, again, he has 4 separate lawsuits. If he continues to settle these, it's not going to look good for him. But listen, I'm with the victims, but again, people are going to do what they feel is best for them. So it says, unlike many victims who have come forward after decades, Miss Doe can prove that she not only met Mr. Combs on the night in question, but was in his studio in New York City with him on that night. Remember, when viewing these, Mrs. Doe was 17 years old. So, okay. So what the lawyer is saying, that he can, for a fact, say that she met him on the night in question. The only problem with that, meeting someone and these allegations, not saying that they're not true, but you would have to prove it. And I don't believe she would be able to do that, considering she was the only one, and who's going to corroborate her story. So let's keep going. And these are pictures. Obviously, they blurred out her face. So Mrs. Doe has lived with her memories of this fateful night for 20 years, during which time she has suffered extreme emotional distress that has impacted nearly every aspect of her. And I totally get it. Like, this is terrible. Miss Doe's face has been blurred in the following pictures for the purpose of anonymity. So obviously she doesn't want people to see who she is. And, for the purposes of her life and personal relationships. So he goes on to say, given the brave women who have come forward against Mr. Combs and Mr. Pierre in recent weeks, Mrs. Doe is doing the same. So basically stating, listen, she is not the only one. Everybody is coming forward. She's doing the same thing. So this is where I want you guys to pay attention. People do these videos for views, and they on here lying to y'all, saying that Diddy is going to jail, a lawsuit. That is a lie. Let's pay close attention to number 9. Okay, let's pay close attention. To that end, Mrs. Doe brings this action seeking injunctive, declaratory, and monetary relief against defendants in violation of the Victims of Gender Motivated Violence Protection Law. Mic drop. They are seeking injunctive, declaratory, and monetary relief. Do you guys know what that is? They want money. Putting a person in jail, you're not going to get money from putting them in jail. So they want money. So obviously they want this to be a lawsuit. They want him to settle. This is money. I wouldn't say it's money motivated, but if they wanted him to be in jail, then they would have went a different route. There is no such a thing. That is all a lie. So now in number 10, it goes to talk about the court has jurisdiction over this matter. As this action involves citizens of different states and the amount in controversy in this matter exceeds $75,000. So they want, in excess of $75,000. And apparently the law is basically this is the route to do it. The court has supplemental jurisdiction over plaintiffs' related claims arising under state. Well, I'm not even reading that. So let's get to, we're going to skip down here because some of this stuff, so they talks about where the parties live. She's in Canada. It says Sean is a citizen of the state of California, but I also thought Sean Diddy, I thought he also had a place in New York. So it's interesting that they're referring to California and not his New York residence. So I'm wondering, the laws in California may be a little bit different. It says Harvey Pierre is a citizen of the state of New York. Defendant, the third assailant, is, upon information and belief, a citizen of the state of New York. Again, she doesn't know who this person was, which is normal. If you were GR'd, people don't come in there introducing their names, but unfortunately, it becomes a problem in this particular situation, especially because they're going to deny it. So it talks about Diddy's business. Obviously, they're coming after his business. Daddy's House Recordings, which was incorporated in New York. So I'm going to skip that because, let's see. Well, let's go back because it's referencing his business, which is Daddy's House, and or Sean Combs owned and operated the Daddy's House recording studio, wherein, so this is apparently where this happened. She's saying she was R'd at his business. Okay. Talks about Bad Boy Entertainment Holdings, which is a music media and entertainment company founded and owned by the defendant. Sean Combs. Bad Boy is incorporated and headquartered in New York, New York. And it says this is during the relevant time and period. So let's skip some of this because I want to get to what happened, right? Now, this happened in 2003. I'm just curious as to, like, how long ago was that? What, 20 years ago? Yeah, 20 years ago. So this girl is about, what, 37 years old? I don't know, could be 38. Okay, so it says in 2003, Mrs. Doe was 17 years old, 11th grade, residing in a suburb of Detroit. Okay, so she lived in Detroit. At the time, Mr. Combs was 34, twice the age of Miss Doe, and one of the most well-known influential music artists of all times. A decade earlier, Mr. Combs founded Bad Boy and installed his longtime friend, Mr. Pierre, into the role of president. That is very important because what they're stating is this is his friend. So he put his friend in this position, and therefore his friend has been a part of the problem in RN women. So that's very important. Now, at the time, Mr. Cohn had many connections to Michigan. Remember, the girl, Jane Doe, is from Michigan, including, amongst others, the BMF, which is a de-trafficking and money laundering or the organization that is rumored to have seeded Bad Boy. Mic drop. So this complaint just reeks of criminal behavior. So what this attorney is doing is tying Diddy to criminal behavior. Not only is the lawyer saying that he is a gang RR, he's also saying that he is tied to DRUG trafficking. He's making this dude out to be a monster. Well, this is the thing though. It is stated that Diddy actually did have ties to BMF. Now, that is just what the streets is saying. So I'm just saying, so I don't know. Maybe it's true. This is what the complaint is saying. Accordingly, upon information and belief, Mr. Combs' associates, including Mr. Pierre and the third assailant, spent a lot of time around the Detroit area. So, hey, I guess they had ties to BMF, Black Mafia family, right? It's saying on one evening between the spring and fall of 2003, Mrs. Doe was out with friends. It was not uncommon for her and her friends to frequent bars and lounges in Detroit area. So she hung out in bars in Detroit. She was 17. Now, I don't know how she was doing that, but yeah, I know how she was doing it because guess what? I did it too. Just had to remember that. It was not uncommon for her and her friends to frequent bars and lounges in the Detroit area. Certain of Mrs. Doe's friends were well connected to people in the music industry. Now, on the evening in question, Miss Doe was with friends in a lounge when she was approached by who she later learned was Mr. Pierre. Mr. Pierre, remember we talked about this already. This is just breaking it down all the way. Mr. Pierre was with his own friends, including the third person who we don't know the name of this person. Now, Mr. Pierre and the third assailant, who remains nameless, and their friends were dressed in suits. Okay. So they were dressed up. Mr. Pierre repeatedly complimented her on her appearance, saying that she was hot, amongst other things. He then began talking about his self-described best friend and brother, who we later learned is Mr. Combs. Specifically, Mr. Pierre continually stated that Mr. Combs would love to meet Miss Doe. So remember earlier in the complaint, we talked about the connection, how Mr. Pierre or Harvey Pierre put Combs on the phone, and he convinced her to get on a private jet to come to New York. So it says Mr. Pierre even called Mr. Combs. So now we're talking about it, and put Miss Doe on the line. Mr. Combs told Miss Doe that he would love to meet her and that she should accompany Mr. Pierre to New York City on a private jet. So it says shortly thereafter, Mr. Pierre directed Miss Doe to go with him into a bathroom at a lounge. Once inside the bathroom, Mr. Pierre began to smoke crack from what appeared to be an aluminum can, a whole crackhead. After he finished smoking crack, Mr. Pierre suddenly took out his peen, demanded that Miss Doe suck his, and forced Mrs. Doe head down to perform oral sex. This is so nasty. Okay, after assaulting Miss Doe, Mr. Pierre directed her to accompany him, the third assailant, and a third member of their group to an airport in Pontiac, Michigan. So wait a minute. I read this already, y'all, but I just realized something that I missed the first time. So it looks like he ordered her before she even got on the plane to come to New York. I missed that the first time. Okay. So after SEX assaulting Miss Doe, Mr. Pierre directed her to accompany him and the third assailant and the third member of the group to an airport in Pontiac, Michigan. Yes, where Signature, a fixed base operator, had prepared a private jet to take the four of them to New York. So it looks like the first assault actually happened before she got on the airplane. All right, let's keep reading. So upon information and belief, the private jet landed at Teterboro Airport. Upon departing the jet, two black SUVs were awaiting the group. So for those of you that don't know, people take private jets all the time. You can take it if you got about 30,000. So that's pretty much how it goes. They may even have some kind of chart or some kind of, because I know that they should be keeping, I don't know what it will be called, but then it was 20 years ago. So I don't even know if the records will go back that far. So let's keep moving here. We're at line 31. It says Miss Doe got into an SUV with Pierre and the third assailant, and the other member of the group went in a second SUV. The SUVs brought the group to Daddy's House recording studio, a recording studio and hangout. So he said it was a hangout, and it was operated by Mr. Combs' bad boy. So basically it was a studio where people would be hanging out there. It says when Mrs. Doe arrived, she was escorted into the building where she distinctly remembers seeing a sign for the company, Technicolor. Okay. Upon entering the studio, Miss Doe first encountered Mr. Combs. At the time she arrived, a female recording artist was using the studio as Mr. Combs and her parents watched on. Okay. Wonder who that was. She finished up, and shortly after, Mrs. Doe arrived and left. Okay, so they finished up, and it was just her in the studio. wondering who that person was. While still in the studio section of Daddy's house, Mr. Combs asked Miss Doe to sit on his lap to take a picture. So this is a copy of the photograph, guys. This is a copy of the photograph right here. So it's included in the document. Okay. Let me get my screens going. Wait a minute, y'all. I just lost my, oh, there it goes. I got so many screens going on here that I'm losing my little focus. But wait a minute, this is actually too big. I can't even. All right, let me get my screens together here. All right, okay, because I have it up here, but I'm actually reading it on another screen. All right, so that's the picture there, as you guys can see. So it says, there's the picture below. It says Mr. Combs, Mr. Pierre, and the third assistant began to apply. You know, we talked about that earlier in the summary. Began to Miss Doe, a 17-year-old child with a copious amounts of, you already know, the OD word, alcohol and D's. While the evening became a blur, Mrs. Doe, obviously she can't remember. She does recall Mr. Combs and Pierre and a third assailant hitting on her incessantly, stroking her body, asking to have her ass and telling her how hot and sexy she was. I'm sorry, asking her to see her ass. I'm like, asking her to have her ass. What? Asking her to see. This whole thing is a mess. Various other pictures were taken in the studio that night, leaving no doubt that Miss Doe was in Mr. Combs' New York City studio with Mr. Combs on the night she was art. So again, the pictures say obviously she was there, but the pictures will not be enough to say, we know you did it. We know you do. We know you did it because, you know, this happened, you know, you settled. That is not enough to prove this case. The pictures mean absolutely, it's just, yeah, okay, she was there, but it does not mean anything else. So it says, as the night wore on, the 17-year-old Miss Doe became more and more inebriated. She was drinking, you know, they were giving her the D's and all of that. Eventually to the point, and when I say D, I mean the DRUGS, okay? Okay, eventually to the point that she could not possibly, again, here we go with that word, consented to having sex with anyone, much less someone twice her age. Mm-hmm. So he wants to continually say that because at her age, she's at the consenting age. So, you know, we're in a world where, you know, it would be like, okay, you wasn't 18, but now we know people are not waiting till they're 18. So consenting age is like 16 and 17 now. So he wants to keep letting you guys know that because she was inebriated, she was not of sound mind. So she could not have provided that to be able to say, hey, I can have that, because she wasn't, you know, she was out of it. Okay. Nonetheless, that evening, Mr. Combs directed Ms. Doe to accompany him to a bathroom at the studio. Once there, Mr. Combs removed Ms. Doe's shirt and underwear and penetrated her from behind with his peen while she hung over the sink. Okay. Miss Doe did not consent to having sex with Mr. Combs, but he continued thrusting. At some point, Mr. Combs turned Miss Doe around to face him. He told her that he could not orgasm and asked her to squeeze his nipples as hard as she could to help him get off. He then turned her back around and continued to R her. Oh boy, this is too much. By this point, Miss Doe was coming in and out of consciousness because of the DRUGS and alcohol she had been given by defendant. So I'm going to say D, y'all. Just know I mean DRUGS, okay? Her next memory was looking up into the mirror above the sink to find that the third assailant, had replaced Mr. Combs and was eyeing her from behind. So this is really disgusting. Okay, so what she's saying, obviously she was in and out of consciousness. You are not aware as to what is going on, but she, got a glimpse of Amira and who she thought was behind her, which she didn't give consent to him either, had been switched off with somebody else. This is so nasty. Like, this is just nasty. So, this is just nasty. Oh my gosh. Okay. Mr. Combs was watching the third assailant sex assault Mrs. Doe from a chair outside of the bathroom. So this is just disgusting. So not only did he move to the side and allow his friend or whoever this third person was, he sat there and watched it. This is sick. This is just disgusting. At this point, Miss Doe mustered the energy to tell the third assailant to stop and that she did not want to be having sex with him. The third assailant did not stop and continued to arm Miss Doe, who did not have the strength to force him off of her. After the third assailant was finished, he was replaced by Mr. Pierre, oh my goodness, who began by having non-consensual sex with Miss Doe before violently forcing her to give him oral sex. During the later part of the assault, Mr. Pierre forced his peen into Miss Doe's mouth without her consent. Miss Doe remembers that Mr. Pierre was sweaty and that she had difficulty breathing. He was stinking. I mean, just funky. This is, oh my goodness, y'all. This is, something really needs to be done about this. The bad part of our judicial system is, unfortunately, like in this situation, I don't doubt that this woman was in and out of consciousness. And it's really sad that nothing is going to happen to him. Like, he won't spend a day in jail for this. But clearly, if this is just nasty. But let me finish. This so stanky, sweaty. He looked, Harvey Pierre looked like he stank. I mean, I'm just saying. When Mr. Pierre finished, he left Mrs. Doe in the bathroom alone. Miss Doe fell into a fetal position and she lay on the floor. Her body was in pain. Finally, after a period of time, she regained her bearings. However, she could barely stand up following the GR and had to be helped to walk out of the building and back to the car. And as I said before, I wonder who was that person that helped her. She was taken back to an airport and flown back to Michigan. So whoever the person that helped her back in the car, they will never admit it because that would mean that they had knowledge of this. And we know for these things to happen, as we saw it with R. Kelly, as we saw it with Bill Cosby, they have people around them that allow this shit to happen. This is really disgusting. It says she has very limited recollection of her transport home and only remembers being in her car sometime early in the morning. Her underwear were missing. As a result of being armed by Mr. Combs, Mr. Pierre, and a third assailant, Miss Doe suffers significant emotional distress and feels of shame that have plagued her life and her personal relationship for 20 years. So, this is really sad. Like, I'm not sure what the law can do about things like this because it does happen. And just imagine being in this position against somebody of his stature. Like, I don't even know how you would even begin to report when everybody is a fan, So it says Mrs. Doe knew that speaking out against defendants would be extremely difficult, which is true, and that she would likely be subjected to retaliation and defamatory slurs and attacks. However, it stated that, I'm going to skim through this part like really fast because 49 is saying that in November 2023, Miss Doe, she read about Cassie's lawsuit pretty much. And it was most triggering for her when she learned about Cassie's allegations of sex trafficking and being forced to have sex with other men against her will. It states that Mrs. Doe obviously understands that she had also been sex trafficked. So it looks like that although she knows she was maybe, once she saw Cassie's complaint and everything that went on, she remembered that, hey, this happened to me. And she learned that Mr. Combs' behavior in forcing women into non-consensual situations was not an isolated incident or unique to only Miss Ventura. So she learned, sometimes people can feel like, dang, did I do something wrong? Or, try to like in their mind, try to filter through, how could this have been different? But apparently nothing that she did would have made this happen. This is just who this dude is. And it talks about then, days later, she learned about the case being filed against Pierre. So basically, she learned a bunch of information after supposedly reading this stuff online. And, apparently she reached out to this lawyer. And that is what she's saying happened. So we're going to kind of skim through this because that is pretty much it in a nutshell. But let's get to this part because the other part don't necessarily need to read that. I mean, it's basically saying how she learned about it, and I read that already. And it basically at page 13, obviously this is a money judgment. She's looking to be compensated, including consequential damages, lost wages. So she wants to be compensated for mental anguish, severe emotional distress, you name it. Everything this has caused, she wants to be compensated. So what I want you guys to really pay close attention to, you see this name? This is the same lawyer. Now you see that on the screen. I want you to remember that, Douglas H. Wigder. Remember that because I'm about to show you something else for those of you who may have forgotten, because I had to go back and look, okay? And then I'm going to scroll down to another complaint. Well, I can just go ahead and share it. It don't matter. It don't matter. So let me show y'all something else because it'd be so much going on. Let me show y'all this. Let's see here. Okay, y'all remember this complaint? If you don't, I can refresh your memory. Well, this is Cassie's complaint. And what I say that, that lawyer did a copy paste. Y'all remember that? That's a copy and paste. But what I want to show you, because again, if I can show you stuff, you can see it on your own. We're just going to scroll down to the beginning. What does that say? That's the same lawyer. So that is pretty much all I wanted to show y'all. But the information here is this lawyer has a lot of information on him. So he is using the information that he has, including the information that this victim has provided him to take Diddy down. Diddy is not going to settle this particular lawsuit, and I'm going to tell you why. The lawsuit with Cassie, I assume that he thought that if he settled, it would go away. Well, Cassie's lawsuit did go away, but what he failed to realize is he knew what he had been doing. So the fact that that got out into the public is now encouraging other women to stand up for what has happened to them. So this is just open Pandora's box. And I don't believe he's going to settle. He will not settle this case. He will take this case to court. The issue with this case, and it's really sad, she has a very low percentage of getting anything. And I'm going to tell you why. It was only her. Who are the witnesses? Nobody is going to stand up and say that that actually happened. Who's going to say that? Harvey Pierre going to say it? So you think he's going to go and admit to R-ing somebody, considering he has another case open? Nobody is going to do that. So they're not going to do that. So her case is very unlikely of her getting any type of settlement. So I don't believe that she's going to get any type of settlement. I want to show y'all something else. Just give me a moment here. Just give me a moment. I want to bring up something and show y'all. Just give me a moment. Just give me a moment because I want to show y'all this because y'all don't, I like to show y'all. Y'all don't be listening. All right, let me get this going. So I want to show y'all something. Just give me a moment here. Let's talk about, in this, This is just a tad bit of information that I would like to show you. Wait a minute, where is it? Okay, wait a minute. Right here. Is it showing? Oh, what is that? No, 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 no. We don't want to stop. Stop. Okay, let me show y'all what I'm trying to show you. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is what I want to show y'all. So I want to go over the consenting age. Now, this is for Georgia. I mean, consenting age for sex. Okay, let's just go to. Okay, this happened in New York. It's still about the same. I think in New York it may be 17. Okay, here we go. So I wanted to bring this up because this is so important. With the young lady, obviously she said that she was fed, DRUS and all of that. We've heard that before. So I mean, do we believe it? I do. But the issue here is the jury have to believe it. They only go on facts. They can't go on hearsay or what they heard. It has to be factual information. So the issue here is she was of consenting age. The other issue here is who is her witness? Again, guys, Cassie, totally different situation. Diddy had gotten into it with other artists, which was I can't remember the guy's name, but he actually came out and said, yeah, he did do that. He did blow up my car. So people came out in support of Cassie because she had built these relationships and people knew who she was. This is not going to happen for this victim because nobody knows who she was. So people would literally have to remember 20 years ago and say, yeah, I was the artist that was there that day. But even if you were the artist that was there that day when she arrived, who can actually say that she was art? Again, with Cassie's situation, very different. Because if you guys recall, Cassie's videos and pictures went out to other rappers. Again, proof. So I'm just trying to give you guys some information that is more factual than making up stuff. So y'all let me know what y'all think, obviously, in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, I'll catch y'all in the next video. Also, I think I'm done with it. I'm going to post it later, my Patreon. So you guys can come over to Patreon again. YouTube does not allow you to do a lot of stuff over here. And I like to just say the words. All of that R stuff is irritating. I would rather just say it is. You got to say R. You can't say this. It's just irritating. I like to just talk about whatever I'm talking about. So I'll see y'all in the next video.